Go ahead, Sam.
Welcome to Lumina Communications Thought Leaders in Conversation virtual series. I'm Sam Singh, partner with Lumina Communications. We are a B2B technology firm supporting clients in cybersecurity, enterprise software and services, and infrastructure management. Our event today coincides with Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and it seemed fitting to bring together an all-star cast of women in cybersecurity in today's discussion. I'd like to quickly introduce you to our amazing panelists. We have Michelle McLean, VP of Marketing with Salt Security. We have Jennifer Geisler, Chief Marketing Officer of Vectra. We have Judy Sunblade, VP of Marketing of WhiteHat Security. And we have our amazing moderator, Teri Robinson, Executive Editor of esteemed magazine. Welcome all, and thank you so much for joining us today. Teri, please take it away.
Great, thank you, thank you. I can't tell you how delighted I am to be here today with this panel. I think the topic's great, but also SC kicks off its celebration of women in security next week. So this is a good time to sit down with 3 women who know their stuff and talk about marketing and mayhem, election security, COVID-19, and other scary stories. And they've got a lot to say. So let's get into it. Ladies, how has COVID affected your business? Jennifer, you want to start?
Oh, not at all. No. No, it has. I mean, from a growth standpoint, we've been very fortunate to weather the storm because, like my colleagues here, cybersecurity is extraordinarily important. But where it's really changed is how we make our decisions, where are we prioritizing, and basically making a major shift on where we invest and to the rate of investment. The most obvious one to all of us is, I think from marketing, we traditionally have had a big dependency on third-party organizations for our events. And sometimes we look at it, maybe we shouldn't have that dependency. And so I believe that that's one of the biggest shifts that we've had is having a fresh look to say, why are we dependent on these other agencies to schedule all these events when they're not necessarily subject matter experts themselves, and to reevaluate that. So obviously a major shift from physical to digital, as well as virtual events, has been the biggest impact we've had.
Which is why we're all here today doing it this way, correct? How about you, Michelle?
Yeah, I think Jennifer makes a great point in that security is one of those rare areas that you still really need it as a business to invest in pretty significantly in COVID times. Some areas of security you could say accelerated from COVID, which sounds horrible and opportunistic and all of that. So I recognize that. But it is the reality as businesses have shifted to digital work, there have been, in many cases, areas where they've really needed to invest. I think it is interesting to think about what changes and what stays the same, and investing in digital events and sort of owning the audience, like you're saying, Jennifer. You know, we have a voice, we have a point of view, we have very valuable information for our customers and our prospects to learn about, and creating events on our own to get those messages out and create a forum for that ongoing education. I think it's been really interesting to watch people's appetite as we've gone through this period, right? At the beginning, there was like, oh my God, like I'm craving any kind of connection. So people were just on Zoom like all the time, you know, and then we saw massive Zoom fatigue, right? Where everyone's like, oh my God, my whole life is on Zoom and I'm just gonna, and so we saw sort of a tapering. So we've been really mindful of honoring their time and trying to get out information in different mediums, some visual, some written, but being mindful of time and being mindful of the fact that they have so many competing pressures. You know, I think early on you saw people trying to say, we used to do this and we spent 3 days doing it. So we're just going to take this and go online. You're never going to get their brains for 3 days. I mean, that's just a terrible ask. and
Right.
frankly rude, like, no, really, we should take over your life for 3 days, even though you have kids at home. And, it just doesn't work. And so I think we're all trying to, kind of recalibrate and figure out that balance and be effective and be honest that we have to meet them where they are.
Judy.
Well, it's great to go third in the line of questioning. I agree with what Jennifer and Michelle said. We actually have seen an increase in the need for application security with the digital transformation strategy of most of our organizations being accelerated. And looking at, like, again, live events they went poof in the middle of the early part of the pandemic. So we've really focused on micro events, digital events, as well as virtual, so that we can, to Michelle's point, not give them like hours and hours of material, but really short segments. We also are leveraging video and email to really be able to, again, get points across in a very snippet of information, because people are exhausted with so much information online and coming at them.
Okay. What stayed the same though? Let's talk about that for a minute. What stayed the same in your role? Because we all know everything has changed so drastically, but what are some tried and trues that are still there?
I mean, I can start on some of that. The things that don't change is there's still noise. In fact, you could say the noise is worse. And so your ability to differentiate, to rise above that noise, to come out with something that's genuinely helpful versus, what we in marketing will call, bullhorn, where you're sort of trumpeting your own self and your own content, not your own content, but your own product more, right? Really trying to soften that bullhorn kind of content and offer genuine information in the context of rising above, standing out, being different. I think that it's raised the bar on how you can stand out because, to Judy's point, people are tired and overwhelmed. So you still have that same challenge of, even if we're not competitive solutions, we're all competing for the same budget, and companies can only do so much. And in COVID times, there was a hunkering down, like we have to do the bare necessities. We have to cross this desert. So it became even more important to, while we've always needed to differentiate, it became even more important to be really crisp about that and really effective at that so that you can capture some mind share.
Judy?
And I think for us, what we've focused on is really meeting our prospect and customers where they're at, really empathizing with what they're experiencing in the marketplace with application security. Really, what challenges are they facing, and being more of a partner in thought, partner in strategy, as opposed to really just pitching product or selling in our marketing. You'll see our stories are really focused on solving the problems that they're facing today, and only looking out like 3 months. Like you used to strategize for 60, 90, 120 days, a year, 3. Now we're just focusing on 30, 60, maybe 90.
Okay, Jennifer?
Oh, it's really hard to add on to that since
it's hard to go last.
It is hard to go last.
That's why I'm mixing it up.
Yeah,
You all get a turn.
But I think one thing, if I would distill some of the learnings that all three of us are coming out with, is that we used to focus solely on customer buying behavior, right? We used to look at the funnel and the stages and all of that. I think so we're going to still focus on behavior, but I think what we're looking at is more human behavior than we ever had before. And I think that's the opportunity that we have. We've discussed offline as a team about making things that, we used to always have, cocktail parties and all of that. Well, we still can do the wine tasting and beer tasting, but what about involving the other adult in the household, or whatever about involving maybe the children of moderate ages in the household, and bring that in? We actually have a chance to bring in more of that personal effect and be more personal than we ever have. Well, I still expect, respecting the boundaries of what it was before. And I think that puts us on a whole other relationship. I also think it takes us from doing the bullhorn, the masses, because you're not going to have that level of personal relationship with everyone. but figure out who is your target audience, who is it that you really can provide the most value to, help solve their problems here and now, and then see what you can do to take it from just that, just pure buying behavior to personal things. If there was such thing as a virtual babysitting service, I think that would probably be all three would be all over that. I don't know if that's utopia, right?
No kidding.
But still, instead of having a cooking class, we're not having a cooking class with chocolate chip cookies where you can involve other members of the family, for example. And I think that's an opportunity to expand beyond what we actually do today. But so it's taking what we do well, but making it one more step, a little bit more personal for who we really think we can make an impact for.
Yeah, that's interesting because you think of us all being at home and not together in an office and whatever that, we've lost that human connection, or that things could become so much more impersonal, right? But there's a great opportunity to connect on a personal level. And I think that idea of attracting other people in the household, since we're spending so much time in our homes, doing things like this, that's very interesting. So what did they, you don't know if you're like, sleeping at the office or working from home. It's really hard to figure out which one it is. But yeah, so that's very cool. Can you give me some examples of some successful initiatives that you've launched during this? We could also start maybe with what you did first. What project or initiative you launched first? So I'm going to start with Judy.
Great.
I'm trying to be fair.
I know. Thank you, Teri. We did a refresh of our marketing, really a refresh of our story to just get something new and different out there, and then focused on really, again, targeting the issues that were near and dear to what they were facing. And sometimes there's just being empathetic to all of the challenges, like figuring out how to homeschool, run a meeting, and have a toddler's hand show up in the middle of a sales call,
Right.
And really focusing on short messages, because people are just exhausted, and trying to just, again, meet them where they're at and what were the most critical problems they were facing today and how could we help them.
Jennifer?
Similarly, I think one thing that we've done is, and I think this is more of a mentality that we can all take, is in trying to sort through the noise, right? What Michelle was pointing out, we still have a lot of noise. I think that maybe we should look at our relationships with the groups that we do partner with. And I'll pick on PR for just a moment, just because, Lumina is a great partner in this. But when we typically treat like press as recipients of what we have to share, and we send releases and we do a brief and we, give them pretty pictures and say, have at it. I think that one thing that we have started to shift is what type of partnership can we have with the press as an ongoing. They see lots of things, they bring things to the picture that we necessarily don't see, and vice versa. So how do we take the time that we have and turn it into quality time? I think this is applicable to other partners that we actually have, but it's really starting to, embrace the fact that it's a two-way and not a one-way. And you can apply this to your analyst relations, other, like I'll say, technology partnerships, whatever the case may be. But think about how can we treat things differently than just a one way. And we have put together a couple of things pretty cool with Luma to actually achieve that level setting, so we can learn off each other together versus the one-way track.
Okay, and Michelle.
Sure. So one of the first things that we did is, we were looking for ways to continue the education. And you have two kinds of folks that you need to get your message to. The people who are really early on and just learning, and they're probably not going to buy anything from you soon, but you as part of community give back, as part of just building credibility, you want to educate those people. And then the people who are more ready and are more advanced. So we very consciously, we're going to have to fill this events gap in a big way, and we're going to need to launch our own digital events. We very consciously had sort of two tiers. So we were thinking about kind of 101 level content and 202 kind of content. And we forked things deliberately, and we could calibrate in a few ways. We could do some polling you know, as Jennifer mentioned, trying to make things a little two-way. I think one of the hardest things about virtual is building a sense of community amongst the attendees and feeling like you're really interacting with them. I think that's hard. But with polling, we could see that this 101, 202 kind of mapping was working. We could say, you know, are you doing XYZ in production? And we would get a much higher percent of yes when we were doing 202 kinds of topics. So stratifying content was one thing, understanding their needs. So yeah, it might've been great. You know, it's funny because it was getting very hard to get people out of the office anyway. Like lunch and learns used to be popular, right? We're going to get some swank restaurant and we're going to get 30 people and it's going to be great. People flipping don't have time. They don't leave. But if you can say, you know, your time is still valuable. We have this really interesting content for you. Share a bit of your time with us and we'll send you Grubhub or Uber Eats, you know, certificate, gift certificate for your time. That kind of thing could be really helpful. And so we did that kind of pairing. So for the different audiences, tailored content to thank them for their time and incentive. And I'll give one other specific example. We launched an office hours seminar. And the thinking was our own team was also feeling a little burnt out. And when you go to put on a digital event, there's often a lot of prep, making the slides, deciding the content, setting the agenda, blah, blah, blah. If you have a more open format, then you can ask an SME, a subject matter expert, to come join you and lead a really effective conversation without asking them, your own internal person, to do a lot of prep. So we launched an office hours series and it's been very, very popular. It's solved a lot of challenges. It solved the internal prep burden. It's also given us one great 202 kind of avenue to get more advanced topics. And we've kind of built a real community. It's been very cool to see the same people come to multiple office hours and feel like they know our team better and that they're really getting enriched through that. So those are some specific examples of things we did right at the beginning of COVID.
Okay. We sort of alluded to this earlier. During these times, we've seen marketing budgets among the first cuts. We were talking about budgets earlier. So how have you been able to continue with that? Or is that what you've seen? Are marketing budgets down and are they ticking back up? And so Jennifer, why don't you take this one?
My turn to go first. So if you think about it, immediately, the immediate reaction was cash was king, right? That was just a standard thing where everybody started to pull back, assess. We just, you know, the knee-jerk reaction, right? And one thing that we've tried really hard to do here is have a 12-month rolling plan, which means you commit 12 months out, right, to keep things going. So that was a little bit of a challenge. But considering a lot of them were events, it was a little bit easier to get out since they were actually canceled. So a lot of that was just doing a real assessment of what is the budget that we have in play, and then actually, you know, talk about how we went that shift. So on one hand, I would say we reduced our projected budget, yet on the other hand, I don't think we suffered because of it, because of what we were doing. If you know, the thing that keeps keeping in my mind is everybody feels so good about these hundreds of events that we do out in the field. And especially our salespeople that feel really good about the hundreds of events because they're out there talking and everything. Yet when you apply the true metrics to them, it doesn't necessarily feel as good post-event. What did you do with them? How effective were you? So we've gone to, I've just been here for a year, but part of what I wanted to achieve is more metric-based to see the return on investment. What was pipeline? You know, what was your actual closed deals, et cetera. And I think when you started to put a mirror on that or a lens on that and look closer, we kind of like, wow, did we just do these things to make ourselves feel good and make ourselves feel busy? To, oh my gosh, this is what we should do. This is where we should double down. And that makes you a little bit more selective and also slows your decision process down because you're not signing up for everything just because your competition is there or just because someone thought it was a really good idea. So I think it actually allowed us to level set. So as a company, from when we look at what pipeline and deals closed and everything with the so-called revised budget, we didn't have a negative impact to that at all. I didn't feel like we were straining our organization whatsoever. I do think as a larger organization, we got smarter, and that means including our sales counterparts to really understand. And so that's how we came across what first felt like, oh my gosh, I'm losing all my budget, to, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity to get laser focused. And also, like, you know, Michelle, try to do the return on effort, what's really working for us, what's the most effective, and then drive it from there. So after we got through that hump of, you know, oh my gosh, stop, then calm down. And now I say we're at the trough of disillusionment. And now we're going up the upper side of, enlightenment is where we're at right now.
The light follows the dark. How about you, Michelle?
Yeah, I think that is exactly the blessing and the curse. We all lost these big ticket events. And for most of us, most likely, events are a big part of the budget. And a strict ROI analysis is tough on events. It's because you're paying for more than just the leads. You're paying for some longer term awareness, and it'll have residual benefit beyond what you can measure. It's straddles that very tangible data driven part of marketing and that squishier, hard to measure part of marketing. But it did free up some budget, to be honest. And it felt like the right thing to do as a responsible part of the whole company effort in the wake of COVID to tighten the belt. And it was the easy place to do it. We had some big ticket events that were going to be many hundreds of thousands of dollars to do them well. And just right off the top, gone. In our case, what we ended up doing was really doubling down on content. So, investing a lot more in the educational stuff, multiple formats. We've done some more innovative, video approaches like Lightboard talks and things like that. Right. We made that investment to buy a system to do that. So that's an example of where you can focus your efforts when the big shiny thing that everybody gets so excited about, when that is just gone and universally gone. So it's not like you've made some hard choice. And now you just think about where to reprioritize. And so for us, it's really been content.
Judy?
Yeah, I would say it's really taking a look. I mean, similar to both Michelle and Jennifer, we canceled events, so we had some budget come back in. So kind of putting that away in a pocket to see how things were going to shake out and where we might be able to allocate it differently. But more importantly, I think it gave us an opportunity to look at what do we do for marketing on a daily basis, getting back to the basics. My line, which my team I think is tired of hearing, if we're doing the same thing in October that we did in February, we're doing the wrong thing. So because the pandemic is an opportunity to look at our processes, look at what messaging we're putting out there, how we're putting it out there, what media we're using, all of that, and really mixing it up. Going to more of an agile approach. Let's try something that seems totally outrageous, totally outside our comfort zone, and see if it fits, and see if it works. And we did the same thing, Jennifer. We did a long spreadsheet analysis of our events. And true, Michelle, you don't get the other things like awareness and connections and meetings the same way from a live event. But looking at the ROI, and it's eye-opening. It's like, maybe we should be doing things differently anyway. And I think it's just being open to try new things and having conversations with other people in marketing, other firms, with Lumina, always talking with them about what can we do differently to get our message and bring in leads and awareness. I mean, that's really the focus. And they've had some great ideas that we're in the process of executing. So.
Yeah, and just to round out, you kind of alluded to this, Judy, but I think that is the one really hard thing, is that events give you net new names. And I think that's the hardest thing to replicate on your own. When we're doing all these digital events, we're going back to the well over and over again, right? Because we're all promoting promoting these to our lists, right, our internal databases. And so I think that is the hard bit, is figuring out the effective channels for net new names, because I think many of us have struggled with third-party virtual events, because you can't just take what used to happen somewhere and throw it online and have the same outcome. It's just not going to happen.
Right, and we've actually increased our social media presence and paid ads through social media to try to get at that net new lead, and also pushing quality over quantity. Again, you could put a whole bunch of names into the system, but I'd rather make sure that it's somebody that actually has the problem that we need to solve. So focusing on, like, trying not to compare to the number of leads we had last year, but talking about the quality of leads that are moving through the lead system and into the sales opportunities. So and I said I'd rather try something and fail than fail to try.
So that's one thing, back to just how you communicate that out, right, Judy, is that people like so much at top of funnel and they feel so good with the quantity. I think what we look at is we look at how do we convert our conversion rates throughout the funnel and shift how we can increase that. And Michelle, the education approach obviously is a great way to do that, right? So I think that we try to get, if you're in that position where you have to convince whether your boss or other management, and I do think that maybe Serious Decisions may have to look at some of their calculations a little bit differently now, is it's not always about the quantity at the top. It's about the quality at the top, and then push that. And then also, can you accelerate? So not only do you increase the conversion ratios, but you also see if you can accelerate those as well, and creative mechanisms to do just that.
Yeah, Jennifer, to build on that, we actually did. We figured out which of our verticals were really hot right now, and accelerated the lead scoring of those to push them through the funnel a little bit faster.
That's a good.
Yeah, we did a similar thing in terms of some of our targeting on the ABM front. We looked at, I mean, honestly, it was like the second weekend of COVID, and we're like, ooh, don't target this anymore because they're not going to have any budget. Let's go over here because these guys are actually going to experience, a boom. But you got to make those decisions fast and act on those fast, because your old way of thinking and your old ICP, ideal customer profile, changed on a dime, and you needed your programs to echo that pretty fast.
It continues to change every day.
I mean, right now it's, bike manufacturers would be a great place because they have lots of money. And next time, now it's fall coming in, maybe heating lamps, right? So, we also look at these are not that we go that specific, but that just gives you an example of how have a changing industry or the type of industries will evolve based on seasonality. Where's the COVID pandemic at? It also impacts our things from geography as well, since we're global companies. So those are all the type of shifts that we're looking at constantly. And I mean, critical to this is having a great ops department with solid data that can actually give you the insight to adjust very strategically into those areas. So I'm going to make a quick call out to my ops department, because I wouldn't be able to do any of this without them. So a word of wisdom, right? Have really good marketing.
Let me ask you about that, y'all. And data, the importance of data now. How, I mean, it's always been important, right? But how has that changed? I mean, in terms of the way you're looking at it, where you get it, how it's analyzed. Have you seen changes since this whole thing began?
I don't know if COVID has really affected that. I think that's been a gradual change for years, making marketing increasingly data-driven. There are still these squishy bits, but they're the exception, right? It used to be that data was the exception, and you did a lot based on like impressions and visibility. And it's so like, I cringe when I think about justifying some of those investments, right? So I think that shift has been building for years, and I love that blended aspect of marketing, right? That it is simultaneously incredibly analytical and incredibly creative. And I think that you know, for different roles, you really need that blended. You know, Jennifer gave a shout out to her ops team. That's maybe more of these data people. And then you have like branding, and that's more of your creative people. You got to get merged, and you need a unified view of both aspects. So I don't know that COVID's really changed that, but we have opportunities like we've never had before to be incredibly data driven in our decisions on marketing. And what I like is that it gives you I think you experiment more because you can be more confident about your results. So you can try things, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. Because we kind of know that it did or didn't work, and then we can try the next thing. And so I think it's freeing. I don't think it's constricting.
And I think that just because, like Judy said, you rethink everything that you've done, you reevaluate everything. And I think that what I've seen within my organization, traditionally, certain levels of people that would not be engaged with the data, just thought it was data, have now been able to take more of their critical thinking skills and understand what that data means to come back with some different ideas. So I've actually seen it proliferate throughout the whole entire organization, not just necessarily on the demand gen side, but you, like you point out, the blend of branding, the branded from a PR standpoint, and everyone's trying to look at that and use that information that maybe they haven't used otherwise, because they're help them rethink what that plan should look like. So that's where I see stronger adaptation within the marketing org. But I agree, this is something we've been getting to for a long time. And it's really hard to go up and present on the board if you don't have some sort of factor figure. So now we actually have those. And so I think that really enables us to be more critical as marketers, because awareness is such a hard thing, but darn is it important.
Okay.
And I think it's also leveraging like the AR firms or some of the like Serious Decisions and Topo and all to understand what the benchmarks are, because benchmarks have changed because of the pandemic. So trying to, like, if you're just trying to look at your stats from like last year, same month, same week, it's like apples and like mangoes. It doesn't work this time. So really focusing on what's out there, what are other people facing, what are the new benchmarks, because none of us have actually run marketing in a pandemic before. So there's a lot of new factors. So really focusing on like the collective knowledge that people are more willing to share now. Hey, have you tried this? Is that working? Oh, you look to have a good spike here. What happened? What did you do? And really just sharing more information. And data is important, but it's also what results are you getting?
Yeah, which one of you is going to write that book, by the way, Marketing in a Pandemic? Instead of blueprint.
Maybe it will be co-authored by all three of us.
Yeah, as I say, I think that's
a
collective effort.
Like you said, everything's a collective effort. We got to learn from each other. So
PR
It's
plans.
probably come from Lumina. Maybe
Yeah,
Sam will be
they're writing the marketing plan as we speak, or the PR plan as we speak.
Well, it's kind of like a business continuity plan for marketing, though, or something, you know? So let me ask you, before I have a few other questions coming your way, but is there anything that you've discovered that, you know, that's sort of off the table now that you wouldn't do that you used to do when things come back? You know, provided they come back, because it seems like we've been doing this a long time, but.
I mean, I think we're going to take a really hard look at what live events we'll participate in and how we'll participate in them when they ever come back. I think that's like what rises to the top for me immediately, because there is, that's like I think Michelle, you said it, it's like the busy effect, but then it's like, what do we really get from that? So I think that's what pops to my mind first.
Yeah, and I think some of these things will extend beyond marketing. I think people are figuring out on the sales front, we all love to be with every customer in person, but we're showing that we don't have to be. And in some ways, the customers appreciate the efficiency and, you know, not having to book a conference room when you come see them and like, oh, I got to go figure out lunch for you now. Like, you know, I think some things will be permanently different. And certainly I think how we work will be permanently different. I'd be very surprised if many tech people were ever 5 days in the office again. And so I think that how we learn to be effective as a team, how we stay in sync, how we communicate shifts in priorities, because we're all at, well, I mean, I can speak for Salt Security. We're moving super fast and making a lot of decisions all the time, and just making sure everybody stays in sync is really challenging. So I think the good thing is we're building really great muscles for that, for the long term, that will give us the ability to work in a lot of different environments. And that's a positive.
Jennifer.
Yeah, just be on the silver lining side. Even though I believe at times I'm totally zoomed out. So we've now been able to use phones and maybe go on a walk. But I do believe that it also has leveled the playing field, so to speak. If you think about it, and I'd just like to capitalize on what you said, Michelle, on sales. It used to be very hard to get your executive in front of their executives. Okay, you set the fly, arrangement, set it up, all of that. Way more dynamic, which gets us down to more the personal level once again, right? So I think there's so much silver lining in it, even though it is nice not to always be on video 24/7 if you're a global company. So there's a little bit, to go with that. The other thing I do second it with Judy. These events have gotten so big and also very expensive and such a heavy lift where we really question what is the return on effort as well, not just the investment, but the effort and what we get out of it. And I just think this is a good time for maybe those ones that have the largest platform to maybe rethink, because I think all of us are going to be a lot more selective, because we're going to find other things that will get us there. We're going to find other things that get us awareness, other things that give us customer meetings where, like I said, it's a lot more efficient now and more acceptable to do it over Zoom. So why do I always need to go to these really big, extravagant events? So as you see, I've not really been a big fan of really big events. And I think about the money that we invest in those big events. If we could apply that more to intimate conversations with the customers, if you really quantify how many solid conversations did you really have at these events, and apply that marketing investment to making those things happen, that is going to be a better return on investment and return on effort. And then we need to compensate with other awareness activities, because like Michelle, there's that unmeasurable element. Yeah. You cannot walk away from awareness. You just can't be all about pipeline, top of funnel. You've got to continue with the awareness element and just be more creative on how you would do that.
And Teri, I think out of the pandemic, there's going to come something that's going to really disrupt how we do marketing today and how we do sales. And it could be the interchange with sales and marketing and customer, maybe it's conversation, but there's somebody out there right now that's developing something based on everything that's happened with the pandemic that is going to really revolutionize how we market.
There's a lot of
opportunity. And I wish I had the answer to what that was going to be, but I don't.
Yeah. So one thing that we speculated about, and I'll steal what Amazon did. Amazon actually sent toy catalogs at our homes, right? So here you have the digital mania company doing that, and I'm going to date myself, but I used to get that catalog when I was little, and I thought it was really interesting. So I thought, oh my goodness, are we actually going to? Is print advertising going to make its way back? Now it's very expensive, so I hope it doesn't. But but if you think about it, sometimes with all this digital, we may kind of swing the pendulum about, say, hey, can I have something physical? Can I have this catalog? And I think that's just, we continually, it's like a life cycle. It's like mainframes never die, they just reinvent themselves. And I think sometimes we'll see, to your point, a lot of marketing things that are new and also maybe reinvented to serve the very purpose that we have today. But yeah, I was surprised the digital company sent us a physical catalog. I thought, wow, that's different. And that's something I would never expected out of a company like Amazon to go print. And they did.
Yeah, I mean, we had just been about to launch, like literally everything was at a fulfillment house ready to go for direct mail right before COVID hit. And we're like, oh crap, they're not going to be in their office. And
that's right.
Direct mail can be really effective. And, to Jennifer's point, nobody gets mail anymore. So all of a sudden it's fun again. And, silly little things, here's a pair of socks, whatever, like you can have fun with that. And we were talking in our prep session about like the creep effect. Like we kind of want to do that outreach, but we don't want to say, hi, can I have your home address? Like I'm a vendor, you don't really know, but so entities that can figure out how to be that trusted intermediary and bridge vendors with people in their home, but that information isn't necessarily going to the vendor, but the vendor has a way to reach you. I think solutions like that will start to be really interesting. And they, you know, the onesie twosie level, individual fulfillment houses can do that, and set up a page for you and fulfill to your customers, and you don't have that sensitive information. But you know, we haven't solved it en masse as an industry.
Or there's going to be a big surge in mail centers again, you know?
Yeah.
Where you
Well,
go
and you
pick
need somebody to
Postage stamps.
like you don't
postage stamps. Yeah.
Exactly. We're ordering shirts for our sales guys to give out. We're like, criminy, like where do we just put the shirts in between? Like, it's stupid problems.
Right.
Really stupid problems that are hard to solve right now.
Okay, let's turn a little bit to this. The studies show that more than 50% of company PCs are now mobile. How has this increased network security challenges, and how can organizations address employee use of the network via mobile devices from different locations? Judy?
I was going to say, don't call on me first on that one.
I want to think about it for a minute.
Well, I can chime in a little bit. I was talking to some of the Gartner
Thanks for the
analysts.
save, Michelle.
Yeah, no problem. I was talking to some of the Gartner analysts about this, and we were laughing because I used to be a journalist and an analyst, and I used to cover some of this stuff. And one of the guys I was talking to was my colleague years ago, and he's like, "Oh my God, we're getting VPN questions again." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm having flashbacks to, you know, the late 90s." So, I mean, people did have problems that they needed to solve organizationally, and we definitely saw, you know, we're focused around API security, and we saw a retrench at the beginning of like, oh my God, we have like old-fashioned problems we have to solve right now. And once we figure that out, then we can come back to our, you know, cloud problems and all of that. But they genuinely had that challenge. I think that a lot of people just moved to cloud services. If you saw all the big shifts, for instance, we knew the team at Brex really well. And of course, like T&E went to zilch, right? Who was putting anything? Brex is a credit card company focused on tech startups. That's kind of their sweet spot. And they have really brilliant campaigns and reward systems for tech startups. Like instead of getting airline miles, you get, you know, AWS cloud credits, which is brilliant. And, you know, T&E bottomed out. But then they had this huge increase in cloud billing getting put on the Brex credit cards. And so we just saw company after company just embrace, like, we have to get help to do this because we can't run it all. And there has to be some level of outsourcing the security part of it as well as the infrastructure part of it, because we just can't keep up. And so that's what we saw companies turning to in droves.
And we saw like I wouldn't say a decline in sales originally when the pandemic hit, but you could tell organizations were focusing on that infrastructure before they started to worry about how they're going to secure applications and the cloud, just as Michelle was saying. So very similar.
Same thing.
Yeah.
I just wish security would stop being an afterthought. I get why it was in the networking side for a while. But if we can adopt security and have that in, the mindset of what we're doing, and because it hasn't been, if you think about it, the Office 365 has actually exceeded Zoom in the number of users. Okay. We thought Zoom was going crazy, right? Which was pretty phenomenal. Then we saw that happen. And what we're finding is that as much as those organizations like to claim that they are secure, they're secure based on a particular set of parameters. The interesting part is cyber attackers know all the other parameters. And that's what we're seeing left and right. So we go back to the very cliche, the threat landscape has increased tremendously. It has. And we just need to keep up with that threat landscape with the advent of that. There's some interesting back-end tools on Office 365 from a team standpoint that is easy to get in. And there's just default settings in there that that maybe application people think about and security people don't. So I think right now the race is to make sure that but that's where the education is so important right now, is we educate people on those different mechanisms and ways to get in that were not there before. And then number two, figuring out how to address it. And it isn't always one security company that does that. It's usually in combination with, as much as we don't like that, but it's really in combination with other security providers to actually provide that holistic solution. But I think that's why we get back to education, is that things have changed so dramatically and things that were never thought of. I'll just throw one thing. If you ever ask a security person what Power Automate is, they won't know what it is, but it's really a great choice of hackers to get in, but the application people know about it left and right. So just educating people on what that's about and what they can do to protect it. It's kind of a responsibility that we have as security vendors to make sure they know about that. But that's been some of the biggest changes we've seen.
I think there may be, as companies are more willing now to start building security in, or at least having security in the conversation earlier on, especially because of this. And people had to rush home, right, without a lot of protection. And I think it freaked a lot of companies out. So is that what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing it's sort of front and center, because even though being in the building created a false sense of security, that wasn't really legit. Once they went home, they're like, oh my God, there's no perimeter. Well, sorry, you already didn't have a perimeter.
It wasn't there.
Somehow you didn't know that. So I do think it made things more tangible at the leadership level of
Right.
like, we just don't have control over this, even if control had been an illusion. So I do think it accelerated certain conversations. And I love the point that you're raising here, Teri, about, it's trite, but the whole shift left, right? How do we build more security? No developer wants to build bad code. They're just in a rush, and they know what they know, and they don't think like attackers, right? Who are the most pessimistic people in the building? Let's see, like your security team. You're like, oh my God, you're like an Eeyore all the time. Well, they have to be,
Right.
because they have to think like these crazy people think, right? These attackers think. And so that's just not the mindset that developers are in. So the more that we can help them make this, sort of normalize it, introduce the conversation, and make it easy for them to apply things during build phase. You're writing your API. Did you think about X, Y, and Z? No, like they're just thinking about the plumbing, and like X needs to go to Y, and that's how they're thinking about it. So, the more we can do to make it part of their thinking and make it part of their workflow, that is super important.
You guys have anything to add to that, Judy or Jennifer?
Nothing to add. I would just support what Michelle was saying. There's also like business initiatives that force developers to push code out quickly, and that makes it just the probability of a risk occurring or a breach increases. So I think it's also balancing the needs of the business to get stuff out there quickly to adapt to the changing market, but also like making sure that, to Michelle's point, that we actually are educating and helping them in their work streams, making it easier for them to be able to incorporate it into their development cycle is key.
Well, I also think, with developers too, it's interesting, right? Because there's a push to get things out quickly, and depending on how long they've been at it, if they've been used to working in secure data center environments, the way that things are sort of being done this way, there's a lot of openness, right? And a lot of opportunity for things to go sideways.
Yeah,
I think,
it used to be somebody else's problem, right? Honestly, it used to get solved somewhere else, and it's not now.
Yeah. And hackers are relentless. They're going to try to find every backdoor alley to get in. They get excited about this. So like the pandemic, they're like, oh, there's something new to look at, and they're going to get in.
Yeah.
A bigger attack surface.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. So, and there's a lot going on too. In addition to the pandemic, we have an election coming up. I'm sure we're all a little tired of hearing sort of round the clock election stuff, but I'm going to ask anyway. Has election security been an area that you've dedicated resources to with respect to messaging or marketing? Jennifer, you want to start?
We've talked a lot about it. I mean, we just have this mantra at Vectra to make the world a safer and fairer place, because that's really the outcome of security. So safe, meaning, making patient care. Fair is maybe protecting the intellectual property or making sure that information is securely shared, which would be a good way from the election, so to point. I think the biggest thing we're just taking out of that is more of the issues that are rising out of it, versus the actual, we'll tout about the election security, but just listening to what the general nation is talking about. Diversity is a big one. I think we've got we have lack of diversity here because we're all women, but we have some pretty good diversity here, right? So I think it's more about embracing what is important to the nation and incorporating that what we're trying to do. At the same time, just trying to, any of our customers that are in that arena of election security, what are we doing to help them as much as possible? That's more what we're doing behind the scenes versus being out front and saying, election security, it's bad, it's broken, or whatever the case may be. It's more behind the scenes, but then learning from the nation's key topics.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'd say that we've had more of what Jennifer was talking about earlier, where it's around how this is a national dialogue more broadly and how we want to participate in that dialogue. It's tempting to try to distinguish between the personal and the corporate. And I think it's a combination of, like, we play heavily in a lot of ways into the DevOps world. And I think it's partially a bit of a phenomenon of the DevOps world. I think it's a bit of a phenomenon of, we'll just call it the younger generation. I don't want to label it in any way. They don't make these distinctions. And the personal and the professional are very blended for them. And
Right.
those goals, they want the companies that they support and the companies with their dollars or their work hours, they want the companies that they support to live out the same values that they cherish.
Exactly.
And we struggled as an executive team. I remember when everything started in the summer timeframe with this, the social justice challenges that were springing up all over the country. I came in one morning, we were supposed to do a webinar with a partner, and I said, guys, we can't do any marketing events this week. Like that I was just watching the Twitter dialogue all weekend with the people we care about, that we are supposedly trying to help. They did not give a rat's patootie about work stuff, right? This was entirely enveloping them. And I got a lot of pushback when I unilaterally canceled these events, because it was like on a Monday and a bunch of social shares were about to go out. And I'm like, hold, like, we're not doing any of this. And I got a lot of pushback that Monday, like, this is really disruptive. And we had all these things ready to go. And you just sort of unilaterally did this. And then by like Tuesday at noon, people were like, oh yeah, this is big. And it would have looked really bad. But as a company, we weren't used to that. We weren't used to thinking from that perspective. And it was a really hard shift, I'll be honest. I think we're getting there now. And then I think internally of what kinds of conversations we wanted to have amongst our employees. It was hard to get comfortable at first with like, we really have to go here. Yeah. It's going to be uncomfortable and we don't have the answers. But if we don't invite the dialogue, we really look like we're not paying attention.
Right. Well, and you'll have bigger problems later on too, anyway. From that. How about you, Judy?
Well, we took a different stance. We actually went out early with a nation state blogs about the election security. And even with the pandemic, when schools had to go very quickly online, and we offered to take budget out of the equation and just help to secure like state elections, helping schools, public as well as universities, to be able to secure the things they're bringing online quickly, having offerings out there where they could have licenses to scan their applications to hopefully be able to secure them faster and quicker than they would have otherwise. We think it's part of our responsibility as a corporate citizen and our partnership with our customers and prospects. So we did thought leadership posts and things like that.
Good. Yeah, it's a lot going on all at once here, but I think, you know, you've hit on something too, and where especially the younger generation, they want to live in, work their values, right? And that's what they want from companies. I say that with 2 of them in my household. So anyway, so I'm just going to check and see, maybe take some questions from the audience if they're there. And I've got a couple of other ones. So let me just give it a quick check and see if there's anything we want to do. I'm going to go on with this one. I guess, you know, let's talk about, we're talking about where we are right now, but let's talk about what's next and what's, you know, what's new. I guess as everything moved home and we're here and staying here, cybersecurity risks did skyrocket. So how are organizations adjusting, and what's 2021 going to look like? Anybody want to venture a guess at that? So Jennifer, you want to?
No, I think.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
That's okay.
I think 2021 is going to look a lot like 2020, at least in the first 6 months of 2021. And I think people are going to settle into. I think it's going to peak again. I think we're going to get back to like where we were, and it's got to be just fundamental basics of marketing to get our message out there, get people to be interested in security. I think other things are going to take their focus away, regardless of what happens on November 3rd. I mean, that's going to lead into 2021. So I think there's a lot that's going to come into play in 2021. And I don't think I know I can't predict what it's going to look like yet.
And I agree, we can't predict. And I think the difference, the lens we're looking through right now is we saw something dramatically, well, not one thing, multiple things dramatically change. And now we've been reminded that really we can't predict. We always thought we could. We put together, I do 12-month rolling plans, and I just put together and just assumption that things were going to be normal. Well, we know that, right? And this is nice awakening saying things are not going to be normal. But that doesn't mean that we can't still go forth with the same still level of commitment when we were naive that things could change, right? We can't do that. So my just advice, or what we've been doing here, is don't hesitate, commit. You know what you know, commit according to what you know today, and then remain extremely agile. Understand that. Understand if you're going to sign up for contracts or any commitments that are, I'll say, greater than 6 months, make sure there's a level of flexibility in there. But please don't wait to do marketing, because 1, we don't know what will happen. And number 2, I think marketing is incredibly fun. You can make amazing impact. So I can't see anybody just wanting to wait to see what happens before you get to do those amazing things on behalf of your company. So that's my whole thing, is we don't know. But by the way, we didn't know, 2 years ago, and we didn't think this way. So go with what you know, commit, and then be extremely agile. Just be ready to make a change. As they say, spin on a dime. You have to be able to do it.
Yeah, and just to build on that very briefly, because I know we're at time, we have to control our own destiny. And that's what this has shown us. And it's really hard to feel like you can do that, right? Personally, I feel like we're like, oh my God, everything's done to me. But it's, things are not going to normalize anytime soon. And so you have to chart your own path. You have to chart your own course and make those decisions and do it in a way where you get to control the outcome. Because if you're waiting on something else or someone else, it's just not going to come. So make your own destiny.
Okay. That's great. Well, that's actually a great place to leave it. That's it for the session, but I really want to thank you all. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teri.
Thank you, Teri.
Thanks, Sam.
Yes, thank you all so much for joining us. This has been a great discussion, even for me to listen in. And yes, we might be writing that book after all with the marketing pandemic. So wait, stay tuned. We're going to come back to you guys. Really, thank you, Teri, Michelle, Jennifer, Judy. This has been great. And I have a feeling we're going to have to do another series of this. I think you guys might be in, right?
Good stuff.
I'm in.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure working with you all. I know for Lumina, it's been great to navigate some of these nuances that's been going on. Today there's all the unknown, and I have a feeling we're going to have more fun as we get into 2021, post the election, post more of the crazy, and we're just going to ride it together. That's what we're in it for, right? And we can all learn from each other and glean new insights. So I think that's the way we want to leave this. And again, have a great one. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next time we do this again.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jennifer. Thank you, Judy. Nice to be with you.